This is 911. Do you have an emergency?
Today on Rescue 911, terror in the classroom.
He didn't give us any sign. He just goes, oh no.
A brave teacher risks it all
I was afraid that Mr. Tiller would not be able to see.
to save his class from tragedy. Then,
Anytime you go inside, you're looking for trouble.
firefighters face more than flames.
Sound like an explosion.
And a falling building could turn heroes into victims on Rescue 911.
We begin on January 31st, 1989, at Durham High School in North Carolina, just before school was about to start.
We had been in the process of remodeling the math science building. This was the very first day that we had relocated back to the math science building.
Durham High School Principal Dr. Barbara Ellis and her staff were in a long-range planning meeting.
And the homeroom teachers along with us.
Sodium borate, a half pound.
Sodium borate, half pound.
In the chem lab, construction workers had dumped all the chemicals together in trash cans. Chemistry teacher Suri Shatila asked Matt Cook and 4 other honor students to help him put things away.
These chemicals were not in good condition. Some of them did not have the tops, some of them didn't have the labels, and we didn't exactly all know what we were dealing with. There was a lot of corrosion everywhere, and so everything needed to be washed and cleaned again. Mr. Jatilla was telling us, please be careful, because they're in really bad shape and they look like they were really, really unsafe.
Ironware, 1/4 pound.
Iron wire, 1/4 pound. Lead acetate, 1 pound.
Ammonium chloride, 100 grams.
He didn't give us any sign. He just goes, oh no, and jumped down off the counter and grabbed the vial and ran out of the classroom. We just thought it was a joke because it was smoking. Nobody really understood what happened.
But Suri Shatila knew that the smoking beaker contained sodium metal, a highly volatile substance that can react violently when put in contact with air or water. He ran to get the beaker outside before it exploded.
All right, class, today we're going to talk about the cell.
By then, classes were in session throughout the building. Hundreds of students and teachers were at risk. When we continue.
They said, I'm blind. I was afraid that Mr. Tiller would not be able to see, but I didn't want him to think that.
Biology teacher Mary Young was the first to respond to the explosion.
He said, I'm blind. And at that particular time, I put my arms around him, guided him out, and I kept saying to him, no, you're not. I led him on back to the back of my classroom and held his head over the eye wash.
No one knew quite what had happened, but Mary Young's student ran to the principal's office to get help.
What I could see of his eyes, they didn't appear to be the right color. I was afraid that Mr. Tiller would not be able to see, but I didn't want him to think that.
Emergency?
The call came into 911 at 8:31 a.m.
Can you tell me what's wrong, please? It was a secretary. She sounded confused, anxious, and frustrated. It was obvious that the person that called was getting secondhand information and could not give any further help. I immediately dispatched Rescue 2.
All of you, let's go. Let's evacuate.
Toxic fumes had filled the front entrance area of the math science building.
I was trying to flush until the paramedics arrived. He never lost consciousness. You know, he was frustrated, crying, and frightened, and I was too.
When we were evacuated, everyone was taken out to the football field, and people were playing around, you know, because it was just like another fire drill. So it wasn't a lot of chaos. It was just people were talking and everything. When the ambulance drove up, silence covered the field. I wanted to know what was going on.
5 minutes after the call came in, paramedic Robert Lucas and his partner arrived at the scene.
Tell me what happened. There was just an explosion. Do you have any idea what kind of chemical it was?
I don't know. We're gonna be okay.
What happened?
Nobody was able to tell us exactly what the chemicals were or exactly what had happened. So we had to assume that it was some type of an acid or an alkali and go ahead and remove the patient's clothing to keep any chemicals that were on his clothes at the time from continuing burning into his skin and his chest and back area.
Can you see us at all? No, can't see us at all.
The patient's eyes were bloodshot and had a gray appearance when we first opened the eyelids and started the irrigation, but it had a crinkled appearance to it. It looked like a wadded up piece of saran wrap.
There you go. Somebody get that box for us.
There just wasn't much that could be done for him. The only thing we could do was continue to irrigate and save what was left, but I really didn't believe that he'd ever see again.
I know it hurts. I know it hurts.
I was frightened when I thought about what could possibly have happened. If he had panicked and the vial had exploded in that laboratory, we would have had a chain reaction that would have been tremendous. And it's no doubt that the children who were with him, as well as Mr. Chatilla, would have possibly lost their lives.
All I wanted to say was, thank you, Mr. Chatilla, you know, for saving our lives, you know. So everybody it was a really emotional time.
So many people come every day.
Less than a year later, Surrey Chatila's sight has almost returned to normal. His own quick thinking may have saved many lives, but it was the prompt action of his fellow teacher, Mary Young, that saved his eyesight.
The one thing I learned after this accident is how many people come forward and how many people are so friendly and so helpful to me. I never estimated that I have so many friends who are inquisitive about my welfare and about my safety. That is the greatest pleasure.
It indeed takes a very special person to place the lives of others before your very own. And that's what happened on January the 31st. Mr. Chatilla never once thought about himself. The only thing that he thought about was the safety and welfare of his students and his colleagues. And for that, we will always be grateful.
Next.
I don't believe he was aware of the danger, and he probably was not aware that he was in such a vulnerable spot.
There's a special bond among firefighters. But when they roll out the hoses and attack a blaze, they are all too aware that the beast they're battling is one that's not easily defeated. And even the precautions they take are sometimes not enough to prevent a tragedy.
Mark and I went through medical school together 5 years ago, which is when we met. And he was probably my closest friend in the fire department here.
And he's a very aggressive firefighter. He wanted to get that fire out right now. And he was doing everything he could to do that.
I told him that I would probably lose him because he was someplace he wasn't supposed to be, you know, just pushing it.
I don't believe he was aware of the danger, and he probably was not aware that he was in such a vulnerable spot.
At 4:06 a.m. on October 10th, 1990, a call came in to the Santa Ana Fire Department.
Fire Department.
It's a fire in Bristol and First Street.
Bristol and First?
Yeah.
What's burning, sir?
The tires.
Okay, is it in a store?
Yeah.
Inside of a building?
No, in the back.
In the back?
A lot of tires.
A lot of tires in the back to the rear of the store?
Yes.
All right, we'll be right there.
Engine 3 and 1 Charlie at 407.
A single engine from Station 3, including firefighter Dennis Atencio, was dispatched to put out what they believed was a small fire.
As we turned the corner, we could see flames a lot higher than that there building. The tires were leaning up against the building. The tires burned really hot, so it worked its way right into the building, and that's when the interior portion of the building caught on fire. The captain called for a full assignment.
We have a single-story, well-involved building. Go ahead and give me a first alarm assignment.
Units respond, District 126.
7 additional units from Stations 3, 4, and 5 were immediately dispatched to the scene. Firefighter Lorenzo Abundas was among them.
It was a still morning, right from First Street, right out of the station, where you could see a real dark column of smoke going straight up, just like a chimney. And I looked at my captain, and he looked at me, and he said, "This is the big one."
In charge of the scene was Chief John Chambers.
We thought if we could make an interior attack, we could save records, computers, and possibly valuable information that could keep the people in business.
Firefighter Abundas cut the doors to gain entry.
When I cut the hole, there was a lot of smoke that came out. And then I could see inside the glowing.
Captain Bill McCoy was supervising one of the entry teams.
Anytime you go inside, you're looking for trouble because it's dangerous. But it's a great way to stop a fire if you can get to it in time. I knew it was a tire store, and I figured we might encounter a vehicle or two in there. I wasn't sure exactly what we'd see. And as it was, we didn't see nothing. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. It was really boiling. My job is to make sure that nobody gets hurt. So I'd go in and then I'd come out and I'd look and see where the fire was, because if it gets above you and it's really hot, you can have a building collapse. And after I went back in the third time, I could see we weren't going to get anywhere. Why endanger those guys' lives if you're not going to make any progress? So we pulled out.
All they could do now was try and keep the fire from spreading.
My breathing apparatus ran out of air, so I went to replace my air bottle. When I came back, I saw Mark Idy pulling a hose line, and I just went ahead and backed him up. So we were right up against the wall.
There was a huge facade around the whole outside of the building, and I was very leery of that right off the bat. I've seen them fall before, and they're usually not this big. This was large, all stuccoed and wired and framed. It was heavy. It was very heavy. I was watching my guys, and I don't want those guys underneath that thing, because if it falls, it's going to kill somebody. So I just grabbed them both and pulled back on them. I says, "Watch the facade, not the fire." But I had no idea there was anybody else underneath that thing, because I couldn't see because of the smoke.
I was standing there watching the firemen battle the fire, and I looked toward my right, and all of a sudden, I saw Mark Idy and Dennis Atencio there. Sounded like an explosion. I could feel the wind from it when it hit the ground, lifting up the dust and some of the embers, and it was on fire. Dennis and Mark were gone. I didn't have time to put my breathing apparatus on, so I just went in there, lifted up the facade. I remember grabbing something, which I thought was Dennis' attention.
I felt something grab me and pull me back, and I was being pulled back, and the next thing I know, I'm out, and they pulled me out in time before I sustained any burns.
And I looked down to the south end, and I saw Abundis and I couldn't believe what I saw. He had the frame and the corner of that thing on his shoulder, and with his one free hand was pulling on Mark.
The smoke was gaggy. I tried to hold my breath as much as I could. Mark was making a real muffled cry. It was very screechy, real, like a death cry. I remember it was very, very heavy. And I started yelling, I can't hold it any longer. And I was pulling.
Paramedic Aidan McGuire was sent to treat the injured fireman.
It's bad news. The roofs weigh a lot, and they're usually burning when they drop. So, I mean, there's potential for somebody getting killed quite easily when the roof comes down on somebody.
To the back of the neck, okay?
When paramedic McGuire arrived, he realized the victim was his close friend, Mark Idy.
It's very difficult working on a friend, trying to maintain at least outwardly a calm appearance, even though inwardly I was kind of freaking out about the whole thing. When I looked inside his nostrils, they were looking very red, which is a sign that he may have got some hot gases. That could be a life-threatening condition, if not now, within the next couple of days, or it could lead to a permanent disability. It's something that you're very concerned about, his airway. He was in a lot of pain, especially from this burn on the back of the neck. We probably put a couple of gallons of water on it between there and the hospital, just pouring it on, and then it would evaporate, it'd stop burning, and we'd put it on. And just talking to him, you know, just trying to calm him down.
Deep breaths. Let's get some oxygen in you. Just relax. How's your leg, Mark?
Mark was transported to UC Irvine Medical Center, where his friend, Nurse Tina Sorensen, happened to be on duty.
My heart speeded up a little because it was somebody that I knew and somebody that I knew well. It's not routine anymore. Whatever happens in that trauma room, whether it's a good outcome or a bad outcome, is intensified.
Hey, this is Mark Idy, our firefighter.
We work daily with the paramedics and with the firemen. They see us each day. They bring us patients each day. We talk on the radio. It's really like one of your own team members has been hurt.
Got some singed nasal hairs. His mouth is clear. There's nothing in there.
Listen to his lungs on the way down.
Mark's wife, Leslie, a flight nurse, was on duty across from the hospital when paramedic McGuire came to tell her what had happened.
He was very solemn, so I was, that made it all the more worse. I didn't know what to expect. It was the hardest thing I ever did was walk into that trauma room because I just know what happens inside that room. He was sitting up, but he still had all the black soot all over his face, so he looked like his skin was charred.
Mark had managed to escape with only a badly broken ankle and burns on his face, neck, back, and shoulder, thanks to Lorenzo Abundis.
If the wall had stayed on him, I would guarantee that he would have died from inhalation injury. He would have had so much hot smoke material coming into his lungs, his airways would have closed, and he would not have been able to breathe.
Later that day, Lorenzo came to visit Mark at the hospital.
I walked in there and he looked up at me and he was real happy and a big smile on his face, and he just yelled out, "There's my hero!" It was great. It was a real good feeling to know that he made it through.
Your thoracic's okay.
3 months later, Mark Idy's injuries are almost healed, but the memories of that early morning are still vivid.
I could feel hot embers and hot coals starting to slide down my back. The flames got to my face. I could feel the skin on the left side of my face start to burn. And I realized that the superheated gases and the very hot air that these flames were giving off was going to kill me before I actually burned to death. And I had resigned myself that there wasn't any escaping this one. What Larry did was nothing short of a miracle. The façade must have weighed many hundreds of pounds. But something happened to him when he saw that thing fall on me.
He's a hero as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I don't know how you can describe something like that. He's just, I don't know. I'm really glad he was there. I have him to thank for that, for Mark's life.
I don't know how heavy the wall was, but I feel that I got the energy and the strength from just knowing that there was somebody trapped there. There was two of my buddies trapped. Yes, I risked my life to do what I did for Mark and Dennis, but they would do the same thing for me.
Lorenzo Abundas received a Special Heroism Award and a Fireman's Medal of Valor for having saved the lives of two of his fellow firefighters.
We're real tight. We're real close. We joke around a lot together at the station. We're off duty, we get together and we do things, and we're a close family. We all stick together, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Step out of the car, please.